I also got a tweet liked this week by his hall pass.
But yeah, that's a story too.
Kay Adams liked a tweet because she had a layover and saw anyone who follows football most likely knows Kay Adams. Very
Hmm.
smart woman, very attractive. If we're being just completely
Hmm.
honest, a lot of people find her attractive. She was in the Salt Lake airport and just
The
randomly
day
was like,
before us.
"Yeah, yeah," also funny, and said, "Wait, who do people in Utah root for?" And I so badly wanted to be like, "Well, tune in to
Well,
Wilk and Wist to find out." Here's
twice a
the
week we
link.
tell you.
And we welcome you to your Week 15 recap, Wilk and Wiss, your bi-weekly update on Utah athletes in the National Football League, as well as you, the fan. A tired Tanner Wilkinson, probably a tired Cole Wissinger joining you.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little jet lag, not because of the long flight, just
Yeah,
the
so
quick
time zone
turnaround.
changes. You know how it is between a 1.5 hour flight.
Well, here's what's funny is if this was 6 months ago, or even just six
True.
weeks ago almost, it would
It
be a
would have
time
been.
zone change because we were down in Arizona. Uh, got some new
Yeah,
merch that I'm
Tanner,
rocking today.
that's a new hat. That's a
Yeah,
new little sweatshirt, right?
liking the new. Yeah, it's just a long sleeve tee with that sweet logo. Love
Mm-hmm.
that logo. Yeah, you and I had a good time down in Arizona
Good
watching
trip. State
yeah,
Farm, beautiful stadium.
yeah, it was cool. It was really cool to be back. That is probably the highest I've sat at a sporting event. Just thinking, just in general thinking
Yeah,
about it. Like, I don't
yeah.
think LaVell Edwards
Lavelle
Stadium
doesn't climb
gets
that high.
no the way it works. Yeah, so it was interesting, but
And in each corner, so we were almost like up in the corner behind one of the end zones. In each corner, they kind of taper off the stands. And in my brain, I thought the only reason they wouldn't just fill this space was it's got to be an obstructed view, and so they can't actually sell the tickets, right? And so as the game was ending, I just like walked up to the top of the stadium to sit in. I mean, this is what actual stadiums looked like 100 years ago, where it's just cement steps that people would just sit on. Anyway, those cement steps were still just there, despite not putting any seats in it. And it's true, like if you go past where that last seat is, the big pillar cuts off your view of like half of an end zone, and so
hmm
you don't buy that ticket. But anyway, it was
yeah,
fun. I mean, it's an NFL game, live
yeah,
action. Everyone's
yeah.
really fast. Drake May's arm, really live.
That's when my dad went to his first NFL game, which was only 10, 15 years ago now, looking back on it. It was in State Farm Stadium, and he said the weirdest thing for him was how quickly the holes open and close, right? And the defensive and offensive lines are so quick and players are so quick at
Hmm.
filling their gaps and assignments for the most part that that was the biggest difference he saw between college and the NFL. Just that
Yeah.
speed, that instinct for every player.
When James Conner hit that big run, like hit that burst, the hole was open and then it wasn't, but
Yeah, he
Conner scooted through it.
yeah, yeah. We'll get to that game. Let's talk NFC West to start things off on the rundown. The Rams beat the Niners after two teams exploded. We had a lot of time to talk this weekend, obviously. We
Yeah.
flew in together, we flew out together, stayed in the same Airbnb
Airbnb.
room. That was a whole
That's a
other story.
story.
If anyone's seen the movie Pink Panther, when Clouseau and Ponton enter the Holiday Inn Express when they go to New York and it's that tiny bed, I think our bed was a little bit bigger than that. But it was
Not by much.
kind of that same vibes, right? Rams do get the win after an explosion off on offense for both these teams a week ago. Having the short week, I guess, really cost him. Puka Nacua, 9 catches, though, 97 yards, and another pin it on the guy's helmet
Mm.
catch. Puka's got two of maybe the top 10 catches in the league this year. Fred Warner was everywhere. Still on a busted ankle, 15 tackles, did have a pass deflection as well, but the Niners are effectively done. I mean, not actually out of it yet, but it is they're not going to be a playoff team. They're just not going to.
Yeah, some 49er linebackers will play through anything and get 15 tackles. Other 49er linebackers apparently are done with this season also. And so, you know,
Did you see
that happens.
they suspended him? They didn't cut him, but they just suspended him for the last 3 games.
Yeah, that's
Like
just, there's more going on this season. We got to figure this out. Not mathematically eliminated, but almost mathematically eliminated. And so we'll just figure you out later. I don't have the bandwidth for this, says Kyle Shanahan, I would imagine. into that Sunday slate, and we watched live Red Zone from a D&B's. Dave and Buster's had just the big TVs all around, and so 15 minutes outside State Farm Stadium, we were sitting around watching all these on the big screens. Let's start with the TV that was in this bottom corner, maybe one of the least interesting back and forths, and then just a little bit of drama at the very end. Kansas City wins 21-7 over the Cleveland Browns. Jameis, he comes in, and one of the best analogies I heard listening to recap podcasts also over the course of the past couple of days is that Jameis is like the interim quarterback. He gives you that interim head coach burst at the very beginning where you get a couple free wins and it's exciting and you think, oh man, maybe we should roll with this guy long term. But the longer he lasts, the more you realize why he doesn't stick around anywhere else. And the fact that he and Ryan Fitzpatrick were together in Tampa Bay for like the most iconic Ryan Fitzpatrick moment where he's like coming out with all the maybe they weren't actually together at that time. Anyway, the fact that they were both iconic Buccaneers quarterbacks, very similar quarterbacks now at this point in Jameis's career, where that's what Fitzy would do for you. He'd come in, he'd actually get it to the wide receivers. He would give everyone a morale boost because he knows what he's doing. He's a smart fella. I think he went to some school like
he's
Brown
a Harvard
or Yale.
Kid, yeah.
Or
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick's a Harvard grad.
Yeah,
like
the most commonly used piece of trivia in NFL history. So, I mean, Jameis, Florida State ain't exactly Harvard, but he comes across the same way where the teammates love him and he gets the ball where it needs to be and he's willing to actually play good football, like play football the way it's meant to be played down the field. But eventually we realize why he keeps bouncing around, and this 7 points against a Spags defense is why. The quarterback on the other side is actually what happened at the very end of this game, though, where Patrick Mahomes, look, I mean, this has also happened a few other times where he gets this annual, kind of rolled up on his lower extremity.
Steph Curry, man, I'm telling. Look, how many times have I compared the Warriors to the Chiefs? Like bad ankles. That's been Steph's issue. That's been Mahomes' really only issue since being in the NFL.
And so the one seed in the AFC still may be up for grabs, except for, I guess, what happened to all the contenders in the AFC except for one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Kansas City gets this win. That was a long way to talk around a game that was not exciting and we didn't pay much attention to either. 21-7, Kansas City. Mohamed Diabate. Don't even mention, like, our Utah connection. The reason we do a podcast. 3 tackles on Cleveland. Mohamed Diabate. Yeah. Andy Reid gets the win. We always kind of mention him. And Kingsley Suamataia in on those like 6th offensive lineman eligibles. He was a 2nd-round pick and he was always, developmental. The Chiefs have needed a left tackle, and so he's been forced into service, and he still is developmental, but we'll see if there was any of that scar tissue where his performance was too bad in this first season, where he's going to develop bad habits and not be able to develop in a good way because he was forced into action. I hope not.
Right.
And, physical beast. Would love to see him do better things for the offensive line later on.
Sure. And I think if there's a guy to get him right, it's going to be Andy Reid. I mean, a game we paid really close attention to because of fantasy implications, which we'll continue to hint at as the night goes on. Cincinnati beats Tennessee 37-27. Just 1 tackle for Jay Tufele. Ryan Rico did have just 1 punt. A lot of wild turnovers and fumbles and just not a lot of action for Rico. 1 punt, 36 yards. He did pin inside the 20 on that punt.
Yeah, the ball went back and forth, but not because we were punting it.
No.
It was
a lot of turnovers in this game.
All over the place. Yeah, Will Levis had a point where he threw back-to-back passes that were intercepted.
3 of 4.
3 of 4, and then he was pulled, and we see more Mason Rudolph for this team because Brian Callahan's not having this kind of... You talk about the Jameis Winston style, right? Will Levis is in that younger version, less polished. I guess there's no polish to it, but like that's what we think. Brian Callahan doesn't want anything to do with that kind of football. He would rather see just boring, put it where I tell you to. I need a surrogate, like my avatar on the field to do what I want to do with this offense, not someone that'll go off script and do crazy things. The Washington Commanders end up with a 1-point win against the New Orleans Saints. Bobby Wagner had 5 tackles, tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit. Jamal Williams, 2 kick returns for 57 yards. We've seen him in that role a little bit this season. this game at the very, very end. So we went away, and then watching the replays afterwards, the refs just allow the Saints to get this final touchdown.
Hmm.
And then the Saints let the ball not lie and go for it on two to get the win, don't get it. And so no harm, no foul unless you bet a specific spread for these two teams, in which case you probably do have a lot of foul
Hmm.
to cry.
Hmm.
And, we'll probably mention officiating more if you were paying attention late in our Monday night games.
Oh boy, yeah. This and I needed the Saints to win as a Cardinals fan. This would have put a huge breath of hope
Mm-hmm.
into not having to win the division to get into the postseason. Still a chance with 3 games left. Washington does have some tough games left. Arizona doesn't have a ton of gimmies. They play Carolina, and then after that, it's 2 division games. And the way this NFC West has been, I don't know. So I really needed the Saints to pull that out. But Spencer Rattler clearly better than Jake Hayner. Don't know what that. There's clearly an interim staff on hand there because
When we heard that Hayner was getting the start instead of Rattler, we both assumed the Rattler was injured.
he's been hurt.
And
He
then
has had
halfway through
injuries.
he's been injured. Then halfway through the game, they do like a weird wide receiver pass where all of a sudden Cedric Wilson is their leading passer on the day. And
Yeah,
then Rattler just comes in the game later on like he was available the whole time. What are we doing?
yeah. Baltimore puts the pound on New York, the football giants. Kyle Van Noy, 3 tackles, a sack, a TFL, and a QB hit, doing what he does against Tim Boyle. I think got in the game by the end of this. Tommy DeVito got hurt. Lamar threw 5 touchdowns and I think 4 incompletions.
And
Like
somehow
just
lost ground in the MVP race because of what we'll talk about
isn't
later.
that something? Yeah,
Because that's what you have to do against the New York Giants because they're so bad. But
yeah.
he still had an incredible 46 some fantasy points. Dallas and Carolina, this was maybe the other one that we paid the least amount of attention to in the early window because it was over very early and
Yeah.
no Utah connections. So
Yeah.
Dallas gets the win 30-14, and the Bryce Young hype is finally over.
Yep, and this comes at a good time because Arizona's there on Sunday. Jets beat the Jaguars, which is disappointing because I was hoping Mac Jones would improve to 6-0 in his career as the starter against the Jets, which is that. I mean, this is literally the shark tail whale poop thing, and then the New York Jets. I mean, if Mac Jones is 5-0 against you, Mac Jones has been in the
Yep.
league 4 years and nearly had a chance to do it again. Jets win 32-25. Only connection, Devin Lloyd had a tackle and a QB hit. I think he got hurt because usually he's at least got, in that 5, 6, 7, 8 range of tackles. Hoping the best for Devin Lloyd. Didn't really see much action after the early part of this game, but the Jets win. And unfortunately, Mac Jones is now 5-1 against the New York Jets.
So somehow all three of us in our pick'em last week picked the Dallas Cowboys the previous game, even though the Panthers were favored for the first time in like 2 years. We all picked the Jets on the podcast, but as we were sitting at David Buster's and we saw that the Jags were wearing their 90s throwbacks and that Mac Jones was getting the start and that Mac Jones was undefeated against the Jets, I turned to you and officially
You did.
changed my position, and it almost worked out, but it did not. And so in our little document, it says I picked the Jets, but it does not say that I won that pick. You ended up going, Tanner, 14-2 on the week in your picks. Good stuff out of you. I was 11-5, and the man that knows ball, Jordan Howe, 12-4, just right off getting into that tiebreaker scenario with Connor, who still now holds the lead. The Browns fan, because I would argue that Jordan Howe went on a limb and picked the Browns over the Kansas City Chiefs, he loses one game of ground in that running, and Connor can remain at 13-3, the leader for our Amazon gift card.
Well, and here's what's so fascinating about that. Connor picked against the Browns the week he was on, and that was the week Jameis started, and they beat Baltimore.
Yes.
Like he's the only. I think he is the only guest to pick against his team, and that it didn't work out. But anyway, yeah. So he could have been 14-2.
But also, speaking of buddies from the Arizona area, we will get to that when we talk about
Mm-hmm.
the game that we went to.
Absolutely.
So the Arizona buddy that is actually a Browns fan, still the leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah. Yep. Arizona native almost came to the game with us. So
A game that both you and I, so you only missed 2 games,
This
and
is
I was
one.
right there with you picking this one. Miami lost to Houston, and Miami looks bad, and they lose to good teams, and Houston's barely a good team, but 20-12 is the final score. Dalton Schultz, not a lot of action, 2 receptions, 13 yards. Both offenses weren't really doing it, and both defenses weren't really stopping them that much either. It was just kind of incompetence and a game that I hoped would have been a lot different. These are two teams
Yeah.
that I was very high on coming into the season, and it just has not gone their way.
To the afternoon slate, a game that Indy looked like they were going to run away with it. And then one of the stupidest
Until
plays when Jonathan Taylor drops the ball on the 1 yard line. This is still happening. The year of our Lord 2024, at the end of 2024, and this is still happening in professional football games. The Broncos then just use that as fuel and momentum, get a couple other big turnover, just kept forcing turnovers at that point. They win 31-13 after giving up a lot of turnovers early. It was not a good game for Bo Nix, but the defense rallied and bailed him out. 8 tackles for Cody Barton, 3 tackles and a tackle for loss for Jonah Ellis. Julian Blackman had 4 tackles for the Colts. Matt Gay, 2 of 2 on field goals with a long of 49, and then was 1 for 1 on his extra points. I mean, I feel like this is an epitome of both of these teams, right? Like the Colts finally look like they have something good going for them, and something awful just happens. Denver has been very opportunistic and took advantage and never looked back.
a whole season hinged on that play by Jonathan Taylor because if I mean the Colts would have taken a lead at that time, they would have gone up. I think 20-13 or so was the score,
I
and
think it would have been 20-7
yeah,
at the
they
time.
had momentum. They were
Yes.
doing well, and they were shutting everything down from Bo Nix. And if you look at the playoff predictions, we talked about this in our preview show. Even though the Colts would have been a game back officially in the standings of Denver because of the future schedules and because of then whoever gets this tiebreaker in the win, the Colts would have had an inside track, it seems like, to the playoffs. Now it's week 15 is over and we know our 7 teams. Like, this was the only toss up in the AFC between these two teams for the final wildcard spot. And seeding will be kind of exciting to see who goes where, but all 7 teams are all but mathematically just locked
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Controlling a lot of destiny. Now, Thursday night could get interesting, where it's Denver and the Chargers. That
Yes.
could get, well, which we will talk about
Yes,
on
yes.
Thursday at the appropriate time. But Cole, I think Buffalo just needs to play in the game of the week every week because, good Gandhi, this was something else.
48-42, second week in a row that it's in the 40s and Buffalo comes out on top. Dalton Kincaid involved, 4 receptions, 53 yards. Taron Johnson had 8 tackles and pass breakup. Cole Bishop, 5 tackles. Tim Patrick, another touchdown for
Yes.
the University of Utah product, 4 receptions and 30 yards and the touchdown. And then Sione Vake had 2 tackles. Detroit has 4 more guys hit IR, including David Montgomery, if you didn't see that news, and Ali McNeil, who was probably their best defender that was still healthy at this point. And Detroit's going to have a lot more teams put 40 on them coming down the stretch, and it is going to take a Herculean effort by Dan Campbell to keep the Super Bowl expectations for this team on track.
Yeah, it's just too bad, man. Just so many injury. I mean, the fact Jamal Adams is getting called up from practice squads, and you feel for Detroit fans because I think they know this
Mm.
was fun while it lasted. And look, the culture's here. Like Detroit is going to be a very good football team for a very long time.
Yeah, Goff doesn't
This,
turn 40 and blow out an Achilles or anything between now and next year. Like, it should be a
no,
very similar concept. The running backs are coming back. Honestly, there's room for improvement and growth on the defensive side. It's still very young once
yeah.
everyone's healthy again.
Well, and there are some teams who get banged up and still go on runs. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles from 2017, 18, and that
That's
the
the Nick
Nick Foles
Foles.
year.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean that was a very banged up team. It wasn't
Speaking
just
of,
Carson
yeah,
Wentz.
coming in for Carson Wentz, who might come in for Patrick Mahomes and now go on a little Nick Foles run. Who knows?
Mhm. Speaking of Philadelphia, they get the win over Pittsburgh 27-13. Jalen Warren, 4 receptions, 12 yards, 2 tackles for Miles Killebrew. Philly just kind of put their stamp, and I think this was the type of game that Jalen Hurts needed with his receivers. Saquon did
Yeah.
not have a great game. Pittsburgh did a great job, and give the Steelers a lot of credit. So Jalen Hurts said, "Okay, there's this contention. There's certainly something going on. We're going to go prove some people wrong. Now, can they do it for the rest of the season? That's what I want to know. It's easy to go out for 1 week and squash beef, right? As a Utah Jazz fan, right? It was easy to see
Yeah.
Donovan and Rudy squash that beef for a week or a couple games. Can you do it consistently for the rest of the season, though? I think that's the big question for
And it seems
Philadelphia.
like everyone still has some kind of beef with their head coach who is still there. And for anyone that was hoping Sirianni would get fired at the end of the season, this little run that they're going on, and now with Detroit being as injured as they are, I mean, Philadelphia could just find themselves in the Super Bowl, and Eagles fans would still probably want Sirianni fired. And yet, this is what they're doing. By the way, to put your stamp on it, they put their foot down on the Pittsburgh
Mm,
Steelers in the second half. Do you see some of these times possession numbers? Philadelphia takes over. So the Steelers punt, and it's a great punt. And so the Eagles take over inside their own 10 with 10 and a half minutes to go, 10:26 on the clock in the fourth quarter. The Steelers didn't see the ball again. Their final drive went for 10. As we were sitting there, like, ball was going back and forth in our stadium. Red
yeah,
zone was going to a different bunch of different things. You didn't even notice what was happening. And then the Cardinals game was actually first to end because the clock was running quick. Eagles just took off the last 10:26 on the clock. Steelers had 12 total offensive plays in the second half of the game.
that's
I mean, it was
insane.
just what it reminded me of, like looking back on it, is that BYU Coastal Carolina game where they just limited possessions. And if you're trying to do explosive stuff, which is the Russell Wilson way, if you don't get enough shots at it, if you don't get enough cracks at the old thing, a couple of the explosives don't go your way, and you're not going to get enough chances if the other team can control the ball like that. And
Right.
the Steelers defense was good. Saquon didn't have any explosives on that side, but it went first, second, third down, and a conversion. First, second, third down, first down. First, second, third down, first down, and just couldn't get off the field.
A game that didn't explode until the fourth quarter, the game we were at. Arizona defeats New England 30-17. Cardinals pound on the ground. James Conner was phenomenal. Uh, New England has a future, though. Sione Takitaki, the one connection we had that played in this game, 4 tackles for the Patriots. Drake May, man,
Mm-hmm.
get him an O-line, get him some guys to throw the football to besides Hunter Henry and Booty, whatever his name is from LSU.
Keisham Butte.
Butte. That 2-yard touchdown, the shovel between two defenders. There's the old movie Three Amigos, right? And Martin Short's character's telling a story about when he was a young
Speaking of
actor.
Steve Martin, comes together.
Martin Short says, this actor came up to me and said, "You have it." And ah, and that is 100% how I feel about Drake May. Like the kid just has it. Phil, I was worried they maybe put him in a little too early in the season, but I feel like he weathered that storm. He's got to play Buffalo twice down the stretch, which is going to be interesting. Also, I think the best player in that football game was Christian Gonzalez. Dude, they've drafted with Billet. They have drafted very well the last couple
Yeah,
after a really long streak of drafting poorly in the early rounds. New England might have found something the way they're scouting and the way they're drafting again because
yeah.
Christian Gonzalez was phenomenal in that game.
Something to look forward to if you're a North Carolina Tar Heel fan is that talent scouting eye by the man Bill Belichick.
Which is ironic that their quarterback is like Drake May played at Carolina. So
And they just missed each other. So like
yeah, this is
Belichick
fascinating.
leaves before the Patriots get May, and then Belichick goes to North Carolina after May's gone.
Yeah, yeah, going to be fascinating
This
on that front.
that game, I mean, you want to speak a little bit more about the game experience. Like what else just
Yeah,
what'd you
man.
see?
Loved the NFL is just such a unique place in sports. And I remember thinking this was my second Cardinals game. I went to one 5 years ago when Murray was a rookie.
Hmm.
I mean, what you see on TV, man, with the dudes in the full lucha libre masks and the face paints and the armor and the bizarre, it's all there. It's all there. It's a phenomenal atmosphere. Our game took a minute to get into, right? Like there wasn't a ton of exciting things happening, but man, I just love the NFL, love what they're doing, and even in a situation where it was like not the most exciting game, like there's something in the air about being in an NFL stadium. We had the flags going, everyone got a flag. It was cool. It was a really cool thing.
It really was. Team store is good. Stadium's
Yeah,
just so clean. It feels bigger. It's hard to believe that in the center of that whole stadium is the same 100-yard field that is on every high school campus, and
right.
that we call, and that kids run circles around in track or whatever. Like, that field is the same, but walking around it, it's different than when you go to college stadiums, even the college stadiums that are, quite a bit
Massive.
bigger
Yeah.
actually. But yeah,
I
it's
like that the roof
fantastic.
was open too. It was not open when I went
Yeah.
5 years ago. Just kind of a cool dynamic, right? The retractable roof.
And we didn't
So,
have to sit in the sun that glared
yes.
in at 225. That was a great part of the roof
Uh-huh.
being open on our side.
Hmm.
All right. Yeah, fantastic game. And the Cardinals, you got
And
to
they
win.
win, and they're still in it, back in the game, as Tony Stark said once upon a time. So,
You know who else is still in it for the division?
mm,
Tampa Bay Buccaneers statement win against an LA Chargers defense where, similar to the Lions, the vibes were good and everyone likes this team, but they might be too injured and just not have the horses coming down the stretch. Tampa Bay gets win 40-17. I believe the most yards or most points maybe given up by a Jim Harbaugh defense in the
yeah,
NFL. Just
yeah. And look, man, Tampa has just figured something. They weathered the storm. They knew they were going to get hit. There were some big injuries, tough part of their schedule. They weathered and rallied around their coach and their quarterback, and watch out for Tampa to steal a game potentially in the playoffs again. By no
mhm,
means a contender, but could steal a game. Speaking of a team that's certainly a contender,
mhm.
still in my eyes, the Green Bay Packers just took care of business against a hot Seattle team that was playing some phenomenal football. Geno Smith does get hurt, but Jordan Love, 27, 229, two scores. Chris Brooks had one catch for 9 yards. Packers go on a road. That's a tough place to play, man, especially when Seattle's rolling, when they've got the 12s behind them. But no, man, the Packers looked really good. That was a very LaFleur-esque game. Did what they needed to do to win the game and look good while doing it.
Absolutely did. And then flipping the script over to Monday night, two Monday night games, and neither could really keep your attention unless you had other things you were rooting for,
Sure,
like a one Tanner Wilkinson might
sure.
have. So the first game, we'll get that out of the way first. Minnesota gets the win, and it was never really in doubt, 30-12 against Chicago. The Bears get a touchdown. I think it was Keenan Allen at the end of it, but whatever. Jalen Johnson drew the tough task of Justin Jefferson for most of this. JJ on JJ had three tackles, a pass breakup. Jefferson 20 so fantasy points. It wasn't 50, but he didn't actually lock him down. Is what it is. And then the other Monday night game.
Which I paid pretty close attention to. Our dogs have been
Yeah.
in dog school for the last couple weeks. Tonight was our last night.
Oh,
It's kind of like a so usually our trainer comes to our house. She doesn't do it during the month of December. She just hosts a class, kind of easier for her just with the holidays and everything like that. And it's kind of to get your dog more used to being around like other distractions. So a lot of other dogs, are about 10 dogs in this class, very ranging in size and where they're at in their training and different things like that. As someone who just got a dog in the last week, Cole, um,
train a dog. It's
yeah,
not easy.
it's part
They
of the
eat
thing.
stuff.
Yeah, they get in places. So I missed the first half of this game. Get home to watch the set, and my eyes were glued the moment we got home and got the dogs back in and comfortable. Atlanta wins 15-9. Should not have been that close. Tyler Algier, 12 carries, 43 yards. Caden Elliss, 11 tackles. I
Every
needed.
time Tyler Algier was on the field, though,
I was
Banner
not.
was sweating.
I was not happy. I was happy for Tyler, not happy for me. Because I end up squeaking out in our guillotine league thanks to Bijan Robinson. I needed, I think, 14 and a half. I needed 14 and a half essentially, and I got 14.50 from Bijan, all on rushing yards. He had one
Yeah.
catch for 10 yards, didn't score a touchdown. Um, and I edge out our good friend Gentry 127.68 to 127.60. Now, stat corrections could happen. Not sure what is going to come necessarily of that, but I feel a little bad, not going to lie, for Gentry, because I also got a tweet liked this week by his hall pass.
Yeah, that's a story too.
We can talk about that real quick to close out. Kay Adams liked to tweet because she had a layover and saw anyone who follows football most likely knows Kay Adams. Very
Hmm.
smart woman, very attractive. If we're being just completely
Hmm.
honest, a lot of people find her attractive. She was in the Salt Lake airport and just
The
randomly
day
was like,
before us.
"Yeah, yeah," also funny. And said, "Wait, who do people in Utah root for?" And I so badly wanted to be like, "Well, tune in to
Well,
Wilk and Wist to find out." Here's
twice a
the
week we
link.
tell you.
Yeah. Instead, I just gave, here's what the tweet said. I'll just pull the tweet up
Yeah.
verbatim. Complete melting pot. Denver gets a lot of love. Raiders have grown in popularity since moving to Vegas. A lot of fans root for college players they liked at BYU, Utah, Utah State. Then your
Hmm.
classic fan favorites: Niners, Packers, Steelers, Cowboys. I got to like. And
Thing.
Gentry was jealous, so now I knock him out in guillotine. And yeah, so kind of
In the top three, and guess what? It doesn't matter because only one winner takes home the real prize in guillotine. It was
yeah,
the fantasy play first week of the fantasy playoffs in most other conventional leagues. I had a couple wins, couple losses there, but man, guillotine. It doesn't matter till the very, very end. And this is the
no,
furthest either you or I have made it. We are in
yes,
separate leagues right now, but we are both
right.
in the top three.
Isn't that something?
Great.
Speaking of which, our guy Jordan Howe, who was on last week, commissioner of a league here with a bunch of guys from Ephraim Manti area. Okay, 8 of the 10 teams made the playoffs, which I was kind of like, I'm the 2 seed, and I got upset 158.3 to 157.14. Drake
Hmm.
London just needed another catch for 10 yards, and I would have been fine. Or Chicago kicks another field goal, and I would have been fine. So,
Yeah, that's
fan,
the college
fan,
basketball way of doing a postseason, where let everyone in and then regular season doesn't matter because if you can just go on a run at the right time, it's good. And then the BCS would be on the other side, where I'm in a league with 12 teams and only four make the playoffs, and that's a little rough. That's pushing it.
I love
But
you, Jord, but next time, keep it a 6. That's 2 cents from someone you claimed knows ball. So
that's right.
anyway, appreciate Jordan hopping on with us though. I got a lot of good feedback on that. So
Oh, we love Jordan.
yeah, appreciate you, my man. It was a good weekend with you.
Heck yeah.
Uh, Fun to just be in an NFL environment in the stadium, all that good stuff. So appreciate you as always, brother. We'll talk Thursday. Scott Wilkinson might be our guest. He might be coming on to challenge Jordan back after the comments made. We might have a little beef
Uh-huh. Words
on
were
Wilk and
said. We got to
Wiss.
clear the air, figure things out on the podcast style, you know?
He watched Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown clear the air. Now we'll see if Scott Wilkinson and Jordan Howe do the same thing.
Perfect.
Appreciate you, Cole. We'll catch up on Thursday. Enjoy your next couple days.
You as well.
Then once again, this has been Wilk and Wish, your bi-weekly update. Oh, we got to do an MVP. Oh my goodness, MVP of the
Whew.
week. Good
Minute
night.
to go. Let's do it.
Let's. I'm going with Puka Nakua again because I think the Rams needed that more than the Packers needed to beat Seattle. Otherwise, Jordan Love should be right there.
Hmm.
Cody Barton should be in the discussion. Caden Ellis should
Caden
be in that
Ellis is,
discussion.
yeah, I was watching a little bit more, I think, of this game than you were during the course of it. And the pass rush was getting after whoever, it's Desmond Ritter at this point for the
Yeah.
Raiders, but it doesn't matter. Gosh, I'm close to Caden Ellis because I'm not sure if in 2 years he's ever won it before, but I don't know what Puka's doing now on a tear 2 weeks in a row. I'll let him be
Yeah.
unanimous.
And the Rams needed that win.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess the Atlanta really needed a win,
And
but
they barely got it.
and they got it. So appreciate you, my man. We'll catch up Thursday. This now officially has been Wilk and Wiss, your bi-weekly update on Utah athletes in the National Football League and highlighting you, the fan.